My dad promised me I'd take over his company after 7 years of dedication, but gave it to my brother-in-law instead. And now they want my help after everything fell apart. I'm Jason, 29 years old, and my life was supposed to take a certain path, one that I worked tirelessly for. For 7 long years, I dedicated my time, energy, and every ounce of ambition I had to help my dad grow his company. I believed, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that after all my hard work, the company would be mine. But when the time finally came, my dad handed it over to my brother-in-law instead. It was the betrayal of a lifetime. And yet, here we are, years later, and they want my help after everything fell apart. But what they don't realize is this time, I'm not so eager to fix their mess. I'm Jason, 29 years old, and the story I'm about to tell isn't one of sudden betrayal, but of slow, calculated disappointment. My whole life, I believed I was destined to take over my dad's construction company. It wasn't handed to me on a silver platter. I had to earn it. But that's how life works in our family. Nothing is ever given without hard work, grit, and sacrifice. My dad, Greg, was always a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. I'd watch him put in 12-hour days, staying late at the office while other families went on vacations and spent time together. I had one goal, to prove to him that I could carry the torch, that I could be the one to take his company and grow it even further. So, from the age of 22, fresh out of college, I worked tirelessly for the company. I started by doing grunt work, answering phones, organizing files, running errands, but over the years, I climbed the ladder. I handled clients, negotiated contracts, and made critical decisions. I wasn't just a son trying to learn the ropes. I was a partner in his business, someone who could eventually take his place. But what was supposed to be an upward trajectory for me turned into a game of waiting. Every time I thought I was ready for the next step, there was a delay. Every milestone I reached seemed to be followed by a new challenge. I kept pushing myself harder, telling myself it would all pay off. My dedication, after all, would be rewarded. Then there was my younger sister, Kelly. She had always been the fun one, the family's golden child, or so it seemed. She had a flair for life, constantly jumping between new hobbies and projects, never focusing on anything for too long. Unlike me, she wasn't interested in the business. She married Matt, her college sweetheart, and they moved to a nice suburban neighborhood. Matt had a steady job in tech, which made him the sensible one. They had their life, and it was clear they weren't interested in my dad's world of hard hats and blueprints. But they were family, and no matter how different our worlds were, I always figured it wouldn't matter because I was working for the day when my father would pass on the company to me. But then came the shock, the one that turned everything upside down. It was the week of my 28th birthday. I had worked so hard, knowing this was going to be my year, that when Dad called me in his office, I thought it was finally time for the big announcement. He'd always told me that when I turned 30, I'd be taking over the company. So, naturally, I thought it would be sooner, at least in a year or so. I was ready, or at least I thought I was. That day, I walked into his office, a place that had always been my safe space, my father's territory, full of awards and certificates hanging proudly on the walls. I sat down across from him, looking at the man I'd worked so hard to please for the last 7 years. But the words that came out of his mouth were nothing I expected. I'm giving the company to Matt. I blinked, waiting for him to laugh, but there was no punchline. No joke. He was dead serious. My world tilted. I had given up so much for this company, putting years of blood, sweat, and sleepless nights. And for what? A man who'd never been in the trenches with us. A man who wasn't even a part of the business? My brother-in-law, Matt, who had no idea what it meant to run a construction company, was going to take over it. I couldn't process it at first. I asked him why, how, and he just shrugged. You've been too focused on other things, Jason. Matt is ready for the responsibility. You should be happy for him. Happy for him? I wanted to scream. The person who had no interest in the company? The person who didn't care about our family's legacy? That was my competition? I could barely stand up, but I did. I walked out of that office that day, feeling like I was suffocating. I had poured my soul into the company, only to be handed the title of second choice. The truth was undeniable. I wasn't my father's first choice. The worst part was that my family didn't even understand why I was upset. Kelly was excited for Matt, and my dad kept saying it was for the best. No one understood the devastation I felt, like I had been thrown away after giving so much of myself. The one thing I had worked for, the thing I thought would define me, was ripped from my hands in a moment's notice. And now, after 2 years of silence, my dad and Matt want me to help them out. But this time, I'm not so eager to fix their mess. It's been 2 years since my father's betrayal, but it felt like a lifetime of disappointment. I moved on, or at least I tried to. I focused on building my own life. I had to. The truth was, I couldn't just sit around and sulk anymore. After the shock wore off, I went out and found a new job in construction management, a role where I could still flex my skills, but without the weight of my family's expectations hanging over me. In those 2 years, I had cut all ties with my father and Matt. Kelly and I spoke occasionally, but I kept my distance from the family gatherings. My mom still tried to push me to be the bigger man, but I didn't want to be the bigger man anymore. I was tired of being the one who always gave in, the one who kept taking the punches. I wanted to be free of them. But life has a way of forcing you back into situations you're not prepared for. It was a random Tuesday when I got the message. I was sitting in my apartment, sipping coffee, just finishing up some emails when my phone buzzed. A notification popped up from a blocked number. Normally, I would ignore it, but something about it felt urgent. So I swiped it open. It was my dad. "Hey, Jason, I know we've had our differences, but I need your help. Matt is in over his head. The company's in a bad place, and I don't know how to fix it. Can we talk?" I read the message over a few times, unsure of what to make of it. Was he serious? After everything that had happened? After he took the company from me and handed it to Matt, his words seemed empty. I didn't even know if I wanted to help. In fact, the thought of it made my blood boil. The nerve of him to ask for help after all this time. But part of me, deep down, still cared. Despite everything that had happened, he was still my father. I was still his son, and a part of me wondered if I could fix the situation. But the anger I felt was like a weight pressing down on my chest, a reminder of everything I had sacrificed for him and Matt. I tossed the phone on the table and walked around my living room, pacing. Could I really do this? Could I help the very man who had broken my trust, who had shattered my dreams of running the company? Before I could decide, my phone rang. It was him again. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen before answering. "Jason, I know it's been a long time, but I need you. Matt doesn't have the experience to handle things. He's made some bad decisions, and the company's struggling. I don't want to lose everything I've worked for. Please, I'm asking you to help, just like you always used to." His voice was softer this time, almost pleading. I could hear the desperation in his words, but it didn't erase the hurt I felt. I had given everything to this company, and now he was asking for my help after he had given the company to someone who had no idea what they were doing? "Why didn't you just come to me before?" I finally asked, my voice thick with frustration. "Why didn't you trust me with the company when you knew it was in trouble?" There was silence on the other end of the line before he spoke again. I thought Matt would be the right person for the job. I didn't think I was ready to hand things over to you yet. But I was wrong. You were always the one who had the skills. Now, I realize it's too late." I could hear the regret in his voice, but it didn't change anything. The damage was done. The years I had spent waiting, working, sacrificing for a future that had been promised to me had been thrown away in an instant. "Tell Matt he's on his own," I said firmly. "I'm not coming back to fix his mess." Before he could respond, I hung up. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest, but also like a void had opened up where my connection to him once was. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about trust, respect, and the fact that he had never believed in me enough to see me as his successor. The truth was, I didn't know him anything anymore. But still, a small part of me wondered if this was the last chance I'd ever get to have any relationship with my father again. A week had passed since the phone call with my father, and I was still wrestling with what to do. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that my refusal to help him was more than just about the company. It was about something deeper, something that had been simmering for years. It was about the betrayal, the feeling of being discarded and replaced by someone who didn't have the same level of commitment. But then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Kelly. "Dad wants to meet up. He's been talking about you nonstop. Please just come. He's sorry. We all are." I rolled my eyes, sighing as I read her message. The nerve. After all this time, after everything that had happened, now they wanted to act like nothing had changed? I had been living my life without them, and now they were trying to drag me back into the mess they had created. But the idea of seeing my dad one last time, face to face, to finally lay everything out in the open, made me reconsider. I agreed to meet him at the old family restaurant, the one we used to go to when I was a kid. When I walked in, I saw my father sitting at a corner booth, looking older than I remembered, his face lined with regret. He stood up when he saw me, his posture stiff, almost like he didn't know what to say. He had always been a man of few words, but this silence felt different, like he was unsure of where to even begin. "Jason," he said, his voice quieter than I remembered. "I'm glad you came." I didn't say anything at first. I just sat down across from him, staring at him for a long moment. His eyes were tired, like they had seen too much and yet not enough. The years of disappointment, of broken promises, were all hanging between us. But there was also something else in his eyes now, something that wasn't there before. Regret. Sincere regret. "I don't know what you wanted to say, Dad." I finally spoke, my voice calm but with an underlying edge. "I don't know what you expect from me. You made your choice. You chose Matt. You gave him everything that was supposed to be mine. And now you want my help? After everything." He took a deep breath, looking down at the table before speaking again. "I was wrong. I made a mistake. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. Matt isn't the person I thought he was. He's not the one who was going to save the company. And I should have known that. I should have trusted you." His words hit me harder than I expected. He had never admitted this before, never openly acknowledged that he had been wrong. But hearing him say it, hearing the truth spill out of his mouth, did little to ease the pain that had been building up inside of me for years. I still wasn't sure I could forgive him. The damage had already been done. "I can go back, Dad. I can't fix everything just because you say you're sorry," I said, my voice breaking slightly, but I held back the tears. "I'm not your fixer. I've spent too long being that for you. You gave the company to Matt. You gave him the life that I had worked for. I can't just come in and clean up the mess. I don't expect you to fix it, Jason. I just want to know if there's any chance that you could help, or at least talk to me again. I miss you, son." His words, the softness of his voice, made me feel a strange pull toward him. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I missed him too. Despite everything, despite how he had hurt me, he was still my father. There was a part of me that wanted to reach out, to rebuild the relationship we once had. But another part of me refused to forget how deeply he had betrayed me. I took a moment before speaking again, choosing my words carefully. I don't know what I can do, but I'll think about it. I'm not making any promises. He nodded, a small sigh of relief escaping his lips. I understand. I just wanted to talk to you. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. We sat there in silence for a few moments, the weight of our past hanging over us like an invisible cloud. I didn't know what the future held, or whether I could ever bring myself to truly forgive him, but I did know one thing. I wasn't going to let the past define my future. Not anymore. The days following my conversation with my dad were a blur. I spent hours pacing around my apartment, running over the conversation in my head. I tried to convince myself that I should be grateful that he was finally acknowledging his mistakes, that maybe it was a turning point in our relationship. But every time I thought I might be able to forgive him, the memories of years of hard work, of watching my dreams slip through my fingers as my dad handed everything to Matt, crept back into my mind. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind was too busy replaying everything from the past 7 years, from the promises he had made to the broken ones he had delivered. I wondered if this was all just another manipulation, another attempt to pull me back into his web, to make me clean up the mess he had created. But no matter how many questions I had, I knew I needed time. Time to think, to process, and to figure out what I really wanted. The next few weeks were quiet. My dad kept calling, his voice increasingly desperate. He offered me everything he could think of: more money, a higher position, a stake in the company. He promised me that I could have whatever I wanted as long as I agreed to help him out. But each offer felt hollow. I had spent too many years chasing approval, chasing a dream that had never truly been mine. His words, while genuine, didn't move me the way they once would have. I was no longer the person who would bend over backward to get his attention. Instead, I focused on my work. I threw myself into my job, finding solace in my own accomplishments. Slowly, my confidence began to rebuild. I had been so focused on pleasing my father that I had forgotten how capable I was on my own. I didn't need his company to prove my worth. In fact, I was starting to realize that maybe the best thing for me was to completely distance myself from it. And yet, the pull of that family bond was hard to ignore. One evening, several weeks later, I picked up the phone to call him. My heart was pounding as I dialed the number, unsure of what I would say or how he would react. I had never been the one to push back, to set boundaries, but this was different. It had to be. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves clawing at me. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you said. I know I've messed up, kid. I'm trying to fix it. You've got every right to be angry, but I need you now more than ever." "I hear you," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "But I've got my own life to live now. I've been building something that's mine. I don't need a company. I can't fix your mistakes. I'm not that person anymore." There was a long pause. I could hear him on the other end, taking in what I'd said. The silence hung between us like a heavy cloud, but I wasn't about to back down. "I'm not asking you to fix everything," he said finally, his voice quieter now. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry." "Yeah," I replied, my voice tinged with a bitterness I couldn't quite shake. "I think we both know there's more to be fixed than just words." "I don't know how to make it right," he said, a hint of vulnerability in his voice. "But I need you to understand, I'm trying." I was silent for a moment, then replied, "Maybe that's enough for now." I hung up feeling strangely lighter, but also more uncertain than I'd felt in a long time. It wasn't that I had forgiven him, not entirely, but I had finally spoken my truth. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own future, not trapped by the expectations of a man who had never truly seen me for who I was. The calls continued, each one more pleading than the last. But instead of feeling pressure, I began to feel relief. The guilt that had once weighed me down began to lift, piece by piece, as I focused more on my own happiness. I didn't need his approval to be successful. I had learned that the hard way, and it was something I would never forget. But as the months passed, I started to realize something important. While I would never go back to the family dynamic we once had, there was room for something new. I wasn't going to be a part of his company, and I wasn't going to help him rebuild it. But maybe, just maybe, we could build something different, a relationship based on honesty, understanding, and respect. I continued to focus on my career, growing in ways I hadn't imagined. My success didn't come from relying on anyone else. It came from my own hard work, my own drive. And that was something I could be proud of. Years later, when my dad asked again if I would help him with the company, I was ready with an answer. "I'm doing great, Dad. I've got my own thing now, and it's better than anything I could have ever imagined. I don't need a company. And I think you got to learn how to stand on your own feet, too." It was a simple truth, but one that I knew was final. My dad had let me down in so many ways, but I had learned to be strong, to stand firm. I had come into my own, and that was something no one could take away from me. And for the first time, I felt completely at peace with my decision. My heart clenched as I tried to keep my composure. I nodded politely, forcing a smile. But inside, I felt a rush of resentment. She was saying all the right things, but I could see through her. It was the same rehearsed line she had likely used countless times to win people back. "I appreciate that, Mom," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "But I need you to understand something. I'm not just going to let you waltz back into my life because I'm pregnant. I'm not going to put my child in a position where they're only a tool for your manipulation." She looked taken aback, her eyes wide as if she hadn't expected me to stand my ground. There was a long silence, and then she spoke, her voice soft and somewhat pleading. "It's not like that, Sarah. We've missed you. Your father is struggling with his health, and this is our chance to fix things before it's too late. Please, don't shut us out again." The truth hit me like a freight train. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about rebuilding a relationship or reconciling old wounds. It was about them trying to reestablish control over the one thing they had lost, their place in my life. They wanted to come back, not because they loved me, but because I was having a child. They wanted to be grandparents, yes, but they also wanted the narrative of being the good parents who'd been there for their daughter despite everything. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to lash out. The pain I had felt all those years ago, when they had rejected me from Mark, rushed back in waves. It wasn't just about the pregnancy. It was about their refusal to see me for who I truly was. Their desire to get back into my life now, when it suited them, was infuriating. "Mom, I can't just forgive and forget," I said slowly, my voice firm. "I'm not going to let you walk back into my life and pretend like nothing happened. I'm doing this for me and my child, and I will not expose them to the same toxic patterns I grew up with." The words hung in the air. She looked at me, her face unreadable. I didn't expect her to understand. In fact, I didn't need her to. I'd already made my decision. This was not a reunion for the sake of family. It was a reunion for appearances. They wanted access to the baby, but I would not let them have it. Not without genuine remorse. Not without a true willingness to make amends for the hurt they had caused. I stood up from the table. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I need to go." As I left the coffee shop, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just dodged a bullet. I wasn't going to let my child grow up in a world where manipulation, control, and appearances were valued above real love and respect. And if that meant cutting them out of my life for good, then that's what I would do. The weeks that followed my meeting with my mom were filled with emotional turmoil. I tried my best to focus on the positive, my baby, my supportive husband, and the life we were building together. But there was always this nagging sense of unresolved pain, a weight on my chest that I couldn't shake. Every time I thought of my parents, it felt like an entire chapter of my life was closed, and yet the door had been left ajar, never truly locked. Mark could see it too. He knew the toll this had taken on me, even if I tried to keep a brave face. He would hold me at night, letting me vent my frustrations, my anger, and my deep disappointment in my parents. "They don't deserve you, Sarah," he would say, his voice filled with conviction. "And they certainly don't deserve to be part of our baby's life if they can't be there for you in the way you need." But there were times, quiet moments when I was alone, when I would doubt myself. Had I made the right choice? Could I have been more forgiving? Could I have given them a chance to prove they had truly changed? One afternoon, as I was sitting in the nursery, assembling the baby's crib, I received an unexpected text. It was from my father. "Sarah," it began, "I know I've made mistakes, and I know I've hurt you more than I'll ever be able to fix. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'll always love you, and I'll never stop hoping that one day we can heal from all of this." The words hit me hard, and for a moment, I was back in that space, caught between hope and the reality of the past. My heart ached for the father I had once known, the one who used to hold me when I was scared, the one who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding. But then I remembered the truth. I remembered the years of silence, the hurtful comments, and the way they had forced me to choose between them and the man I loved. I could not allow myself to forget those years just because my father sent a text. It was an emotional decision, but I knew it was the right one. I texted back, "I appreciate your message, Dad, but I'm not ready for this yet. I need more time." It was hard, harder than I'd ever expected it to be. But I had learned over the years that boundaries were necessary, especially when it came to protecting my family. Mark was right. I couldn't let them into my life just because they wanted to be grandparents. They had to show me they were willing to meet me halfway. They had to show me that they truly understood the pain they had caused and that they were prepared to work for a relationship with me, not just my child. Over the next few months, I focused on what really mattered, my growing family. I poured my energy into preparing for the baby, getting the nursery ready, and learning as much as I could about being a mom. Mark was by my side every step of the way, and I was finally starting to feel a sense of peace. But one day, out of the blue, my mom called. It was the first time I'd heard from her since our coffee shop encounter. "Sarah," she said, her voice soft, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. I'm sorry. I know I've hurt you, and I know I can't undo the past. But I want to try to be better, not just for you, but for your baby. Please, give me a chance." I sat in silence, letting her words sink in. It wasn't the apology I had expected, but it was a start. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of healing for both of us. "I'll think about it, Mom," I finally replied, my voice steady. "But this time it's on my terms. I can't just forgive everything and move on. You'll need to prove to me that you've really changed." The road to reconciliation wasn't going to be easy, but I had learned one important thing. I couldn't rush it. I couldn't force a relationship. If it was meant to happen, it would in its own time. And so life went on. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my relationship with my parents, cautiously, step by step. It wasn't perfect, and I wasn't sure it ever would be. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Hope that maybe, one day, we could find a way to make it work. Not for appearances, not for the baby, but for the family we could still be. As I held my newborn in my arms months later, I realized that the most important thing was not the past or the mistakes we had all made. It was the future we were about to create together. And I knew, no matter what happened, I would always protect that future. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon for notifications.